Good morning. We are here with our special guest, Pete from Word of Mouth Wines in lovely Orange, and we have a great opportunity to find out more about Orange and the wineries here. I'm Jason.
I'm Trent, and we're from the Wind Up. We're here to provide you an unfiltered, unapologetically unprofessional journey of wine.
And our slogan here is drink more, try more, learn more. All right, Peter, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
We are going to kick it off with a few rapid fire questions, just as a bit of an icebreaker. A few things just to know about the wines that you're interested in. Trent, did you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so what's the most memorable wine that you've ever had?
My first wine
Your first wine, what was that?
is a Pinot Gris in 2002.
Okay.
So we were the first to plant Pinot Gris in Orange, and it takes 3 to 5 years to establish a vineyard. But we released our first commercial Pinot Gris in 2002, and believe me, no one knew what it was then.
Yeah.
They'd never heard of it.
Wow.
So it's 20 years ago. Yeah.
Is there a wine that you are looking forward to trying in the future that you haven't tried yet?
Oh, look, I think there's maybe thousands of experience
Yeah.
in the wine world to try. I'm always interested in new experiences. A lot of people are obsessed with traditional French varieties, but I'm excited about varieties from all over the world and like to try new things and have new experiences. Yeah.
Is there a certain grape variety that you're still looking to try?
Oh, look, there was one I read about the other day called Petit Avin, which is from Switzerland. There's none in Australia, and I'm looking to find some to try it because it sounds interesting. I was reading an article about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So it's a cold climate variety. Yeah?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Next one is we're always used to the normal food pairings like steak and Cabernet. Is there any unique food and wine pairings that you could enlighten us with that we wouldn't really think about?
Look, we get excited about sweet wines with things like cheese and also a spicy food. So we've made a series of sweet wines, starting with Riesling. Now we make it with Petit Manseng, but they're not overly sweet. They're just table wines, not dessert wines, and they work really well with the opposite. So the opposite to sweet is sharp, sour, hot.
Okay.
So really nice with Thai food, Mexican, Indian, but
lovely.
really nice with a blue cheese or a cheddar.
Yeah.
So a lot of people overlook that food matching.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last question is, so obviously us, like a lot of people, just going on starting our wine journey now, any advice to us as we kind of enter this journey of wine that's very broad and diverse?
I like your introduction there. Try more, learn more, and keep looking for new experiences.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of people are obsessed with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. They're both wonderful drinks, but there's so many other wonderful.
Yeah.
There's actually over 2,100 grape varietals in the world, and most of Australia was planted to about 8 to 10. So we've still got a lot to discover.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
That's part of what I'm excited to try here at Word of Mouth, because it's the Manseng grape I've never tried before, and we've had people in our Instagram and our social media community have been commenting about it. So super excited to try something new, which is great. I think that's all of the rapid fire icebreaker questions. So thanks for going through that. It's my second visit to Orange, and my first visit was one lunch and then a drive through. This is your second visit?
It's my second visit, but last time was really just a quick taste. We didn't go to all these kind of smaller wineries. We went to the bigger ones. I know I went to like the Cellar and a few others, going through the normal Googling as you do. But this time wanted to try and learn more as we kind of now gone into the wine world a bit more. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we thought it'd be good for our listeners to know the uniqueness of Orange in the wine region here. I read about the altitude, the soil, etc. How would you describe the Orange winery region and what makes it unique?
Okay, you tipped on a little bit of there, the soil and the elevation. The Orange region is determined by its elevation. So they drew a big circle around Mount Canobolas, which is the local land feature here. Of course, that was a volcano at one stage that erupted, and that is what was responsible for the beautiful, deep, rich basalt soils that are very fertile. And they stretch in, north, south, east, west, 30, 35 to 50 kilometres. So they determined originally that any area around Mount Canobolas that was above 600 metres will be included in the orange region. There was a bit of debate at the time. Some wanted it higher, some wanted it lower. I think there was a few vested interests that wanted it lower. So it almost creates two regions in one. You've sort of got the lower elevation, say, 600 to 800 metres. Then you've got the higher elevation, 800 to 1,000. And they're actually quite different. You can see 3 to 4 weeks difference in harvest dates, for instance. So the general rule of thumb I give people is that the reds are better down the hill and the whites are better up the hill.
That's a good tip. Okay. And that kind of, I think that links to the labeling and naming in your wine with 1K high on top of that, probably to reflect the elevation.
1,000 metres above sea level. It was interesting. I read an article recently online in the New Zealand Herald, and they were focusing on a New Zealand winemaker that's now in the Adelaide Hills. And he's actually got the same varieties that we have, Grunner Veltliner and Menthea. Grunner's from Austria, Menthea's from Spain. And the reporter claimed that there was the highest elevation vineyard in Australia. It was actually one of the highest elevation vineyards in Adelaide Hills. And Adelaide Hills cuts out at 600 metres. That's where Orange starts, right? So the difference is quite dramatic, you know?
Absolutely.
But for orange, though, you talked about the kind of two different regions, 600, 800, 800 to 1,000. But there's no kind of definition around sub-regions within orange, though, right? It's just orange wines.
No, it's just that general rule of thumb that, it's warmer down the hill and cooler up the hill.
You have to know.
But the thing that is the important thing that a lot of people overlook is that when you have a high elevation position, you get a very marked difference between your daytime and evening temperatures. So if we have a hot day, say early 30s, something like that, could be 32 or something, the overnight temperature will be 15 or 16 at halves at night. So that means next morning you're starting off when it's cool. So then as the day slowly warms up, you will reach your maximum temperature, but not till about, say, 1 o'clock. And then it holds that heat until the afternoon, and then late in the afternoon it cools down again. But as in warmer regions, say Mudgee, for instance, it's only 2 hours from here, they're 400 metres above sea level. If they were hitting 32, they'd be there by about 10:30 in the morning. And that means they've got so much longer daylight hours, so their grapes ripen quicker. Here, they ripen very slowly. So whereas, the hunter may harvest in January, February would be maybe Mudgee. We're not sort of March and April. A bit earlier down the hill, of course, 3 to 4 weeks down the hill. But so that slower ripening is what really is the important thing about orange. But of course, it's risky. The longer you leave it out there, the greater risk of rain, hail, birds, all those other things. But the slow ripening gives you finer wines. They hold their natural acidity better. They develop their aromas and their their aromatic potential to the fullest. So that's where things like Sauvignon Blanc and all those aromatic whites really sing in this district. But in warm areas, they just don't get those lovely flavours and aromas.
Have you noticed any effects of climate change around here in terms of the kind of temperatures, or it's been pretty consistent?
It's more the variability. We had, of course, the 2020 bushfires, which nobody made wine much around here. We didn't make any. Then we went into 3 years of La Nina. So it's up and it's down. I'm not seeing... We're seeing some variations. Like we had a late spring last year. We've had the heat of 2020. It's the unpredictability of it, I think. We used to have a little bit more of a normal trend, but now it's sort of extremes. And I think we're seeing that worldwide, aren't we? With floods, rains and snow and different things.
It's part of the art of winemaking, I think, kind of having to react and respond to the coming temperature. That's the beauty of it. And we can hear your guests coming in, so we're very fortunate to have some time with you. I think we might touch on quickly word of mouth in terms of the history and the origin. Both Trent and I are quite interested in the story of how it happened, because what your influences, the reason for making winemaking, kind of translates into the wines that you create. And I feel like with the variety and diversity of grapes that you have, there's probably a worldly influence there. What was your influence for starting the winery and getting into this business?
Okay, I bought this property originally, and my background as a fine arts teacher and a practitioner. So this building that is now a cellar door used to be my studio, right? So we've got this beautiful block of land, and it was an old orchard. There was nothing here. It was run down. There's old bits of machinery and stuff. There's no water, and we just slowly worked on, building it up and making it a working small farm. And then across the road there was an orchard. It used to grow peaches, and they actually took, this is called Brangain wines, and they took that orchard out and planted it to vineyard. This is the early 90s.
Yeah.
And it seemed to go from being a peach orchard to a successful wine business almost overnight, but of course that was probably 6 years.
Yeah.
And it was quite inspiring. So I thought, I could grow grapes too. But it's interesting. My grandfather and my father were both vignerons.
Yeah.
But that's a very long time ago, and I didn't inherit any skills from
Knowledge,
them. But it must be in the bones, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
The interest absolutely must be there. And so if we think about word of mouth winery, how would you describe the approach to winemaking, and what makes this winery unique to the others around in Orange?
I think it's our scale, but also the varieties that we have. As I said, we were the first to plant Pinot Gris in Orange, and we respect the European traditions. If it's picked a bit earlier, we call it Grigio. Picked a bit later, we call it Gris. 12 to 13, we call it Grigio. 13 to 14, we call it Gris.
Yeah.
But we also have Manseng. In this case, it's actually the larger berry one called Gros Manseng.
Yeah.
That's a French varietal. We have a Spanish white called Albarino.
Yeah.
And a Spanish red called Mentilla. And in addition to that, we have an Austrian white called Grunner Veltliner.
Yeah.
So my first foray into grapes with the Pinot Gris was to try something different. It hadn't been grown in this area, but I researched it, and everything kept coming up. This could work, but everyone in Orange planted Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
And one person planted Riesling.
Yeah.
So then I went, what else can you grow?
Yeah.
And then this whole Pandora's box of grape varieties turned out, and we've been focused on one country, France, for a very long time. And even within France, there's hundreds of varieties that we don't know about, like Aligot and some of these, Savagnin and some of these other things. So having started on what was then an alternate variety, which is now, of course, mainstream, we've kept that interest in alternate varieties, and I suppose that has been part of our story, in that people came to us for things a little bit different. And then, of course, that puts the emphasis onto us to inform, educate, and to take them on that wine journey. But we've got varieties that we've planted that we've now taken out. For instance, we put Viognier in. It worked beautifully, made beautiful wine, but very susceptible to botrytis. After quite a few failed vintages, we said goodbye Viognier. But so we've been grafting other varieties in on the rootstock.
I feel like that's part of your art background and history, because to me, art, you have to be creative. You want to forge your own path and try different things. It feels like that's where it comes through.
Art's about ideas, and ideas are exciting no matter what you're in, isn't it? So if it's the wine industry or winemaking techniques, we like to experiment with different techniques. We do a lot of carbonic maceration with our Pinot and things like that, and it's exciting to try new ideas.
Even after 20 odd years, it's still exciting you.
Oh, it is. Now there's no big shifts. It's more little refinements of the process. But every vintage is about idea and execution. So you start with an idea, and then did I succeed in executing that idea? And so through the year, once you've made that wine, you're constantly evaluating it. So as you come up to the next vintage, you go, okay, we're very happy with that result. We like that wine. Is there anything we could change to improve it? And we can't control the weather, of course. So this is like your question earlier on. We're the ultimate gamblers here at 1,000 metres above sea level, because anything can happen.
Yes, and it's interesting listening to all of that, and also listening to Deb speak. You only produce the best wines. There's no other levels within your winery here, and I think we've got a great range here that we're lucky and fortunate to sample and try, and maybe it's a good opportunity to start trying out. I think it's
Riesling,
the Riesling that's come out first.
Okay. This is only 10% alcohol. We picked it quite early with rain coming, and Riesling is very prone to botrytis. So the idea is get it off if there's rain coming. So, normally we'd push for 11, 12% alcohol, but it was a surprisingly result. I'm very, very happy with the wine. It was showing a really fresh green apple character for quite a bit, and it's yummy. You notice straight away the high natural acidity.
I feel that.
This elevation.
I get that
it's
green
quite
apple.
Zingy.
There's a bit of sweetness to it as well, isn't it?
It's carrying about 6 grams residual, which is necessary. When the acid's so high, you have to leave a little bit of residual just to temper it. Otherwise, it's just, lip curling dry.
Well, the first, I get the zingy right at the start, and then that sweetness and the apple comes through, and it's great. I was just looking at the food pairings here, recommending Japanese cuisine, flathead and whitening, and I'm imagining it. I think that would work perfect. That's
Yeah, well,
delicious.
there was, when I was growing up, everyone used to say Riesling was the go-to white for like seafood and Asian food. This is before, Asian food in Australia then was Chinese, and that was about it. But now that we have so many other varieties, I see Riesling more specifically towards something like Japanese, because they're very delicate flavours, and the clean freshness of the Japanese food goes really nice with this, with the Riesling. When you start heading up the scale, you might be heading up to sort of Thai, Vietnamese, Korean, whatever. Things like Pinot Grigio work really well because it's got more body weight, more fruit, palate weight, things like that, with the extra flavour and seasoning and things. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I had a few friends that would say I'd only have sake with the Japanese food, but this is a fantastic alternative from the wine perspective.
And that's to like one of our questions, trying these different wine pairings and see what works. So it's always, we have like Vietnamese barbecue food and see whether that works with Riesling, and sometimes it surprises us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, not all Japanese
Yeah, I
food.
know,
Once you start
I know.
using teppanyaki and stuff, I'm going to suggest
love
that's
it.
something different. But
No, that's
let's
beautiful.
have a quick look at Pinot Grigio, because that's our hero variety, the one we first started with. And pretty happy with this. This is our 20th vintage
Still
of
the
this,
same
of
vines.
this wine. Same vines. So these were planted in 1998.
Yeah.
And I actually planted every vine myself. I actually ploughed the ground. I put every post in, planted every vine, ran every wire. It was just a project that I undertook, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy your projects. I wish I could do that on a regular basis.
Well,
Oh my
I've
god.
done quite a lot of farm work in my past. My family were into farming and things. So building a vineyard is very much like building fences, except they're just a little bit different. That's all. So there's, posts, wires.
Have you,
Right.
Yeah.
Have you learned a lot about the soils as well? Go like what works in that area but not in that area? And
Yeah, there's wetter parts of the vineyard and there's drier parts and things like that. But the soils here are very fertile. We've never actually used fertiliser. So the whole thing about these soils here is trying to keep them in balance, and they're quite acidic. So you need to try and address that acidity so they're more neutral, so that releases the minerals that are in the soil. So we originally applied lime, but that's all we've ever added. And our farming practice has been organic, where we're actually constantly mulching and mowing and remulching, help to build up the soil carbon and the fertility, and it helps to then balance the acidity of the soil and release the minerals.
Is there a bit of learning about, I guess, agriculture, but it's also about the winemaking as well? Has that been something that you've been also been kind of doing?
Well, I studied winemaking originally and intended to build a winery, and started acquiring equipment and insulating a shed. We used to own the vineyard next door as well, and we had a big shed down there. But when I first started out, I took my grapes to a contract winemaker. His name is David Lowe in Mudgee, and David's been working with me for 20 years now. It was just a handshake agreement. He'd never made Pinot Gris before. He said to me, "What do you want to make?" And we started with an idea, and it was a success right from the word go. And he's got a fantastic winery, and I just sort of thought, look, the real challenge in this business is not actually making the wine, it's actually growing the grapes and selling the wine. So I thought, rather than duplicate processes, let's concentrate on, I'll run the farm, he'll make the wine, and then we've got to work out how to sell it. And I think we figured that out eventually.
And I can taste it in the wine. I think you've figured it out. Normally with Pinot Grigios, the ones that I've had historically, it actually, I feel like it's a punch in the face. It's a really big citrus and dryness to it. But this is quite
Bit of that restraint there, right?
Yes.
That's also really about the fruit. I find kind of come through.
Look, I think also 20 years of making the same variety and trying ideas as we were talking about. We now barrel ferment a portion of it. So it varies a little bit, but it's normally around 60% in a stainless steel tank to get that crisp, dry, aromatic style. And then we put about 40% into barrel and ferment it in barrel to add more texture and more palate weight to the wine. We tried doing 100% barrel ferments, but it tends to bury the fruit character of the wine. So we played around with the balance, and then we found the 60-40 works really well.
New oak, old oak, is it?
It's old oak. We don't want the influence of new oak in there, but it's the texture and the complexity that comes from the barrel fermentation, and it's a more oxidative process as well. But we find the two of them work together very well.
Are all the grapes you also like hand picked, or you kind of use?
Of course.
Wow.
there's a few reasons for that.
Yeah.
Machine harvesting takes everything.
Yeah.
And that includes, caterpillars, bugs, dead leaves, all sorts of things. The new machine harvesters are fantastically efficient. They're very cost effective, $100 a tonne versus hand picking at $800 a tonne. But we actually train the pickers. Each day we have a start meeting, what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And the basic rule of thumb is don't put it in the bucket if you wouldn't put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
But every bunch they pick, they have to look at front and back
Yeah.
and decide whether to drop it or put it in the bucket. Then someone picks the buckets up, takes them to the bin. The person on the bin puts them gently across the top, and then he does a second grading.
Yeah.
So the grapes are graded twice.
Wow.
This is to eliminate things like, botrytis or bird picking, because if the birds are picked out, the grapes have already started to go sour.
Yeah.
Our sunburn, anything that can a little bit less ripe.
Yeah.
We're looking for ripeness. Don't pick the green ones, pick the riper ones. So I think by grading your fruit to that quality, but it also helps when you get to the winery, you can actually whole bunch press it. Whereas machine harvested fruit, the grapes have actually been bashed off the stalks, and it's already half juice and berries. Whereas ours is, we pick early in the morning, and that's the beautiful thing about the temperature around here, especially in autumn. They've got dew on them in the morning. They're cold, so we're only an hour or so from the winery.
Yeah.
It's really good. We get fruit off early, it's clean, it's chilled, whole bunch pressed, and we don't fine our wines. They're vegan friendly, so we work on low extraction. So low extraction means you get less bitterness, phenolics, tannins, things like that. So we cut off a lot earlier than some. So that means you don't have to fine the wine. So the whole focus is on quality and trying to deliver a product. But look, can I just slip a Grunner Veltliner in here, because this is my favourite new wine. Pinot Gris was our first child, but this wine is a fascinating wine, and it's part barrel, part tank as well, but it's got so much more texture and so much more palate weight. The flavours here are sort of stone fruit, white peach nectarine with a little bit of, grape fruit or something like that, but a slight spiciness. But it's just a mouthful of fun.
I love the perfume on it as well.
It's not highly aromatic, but the flavours are quite intense. It's really good.
Trent was talking about how really winemakers should be bottling the perfume as a cologne because it smells so good, and this is one of those. Yes.
It could. Yeah.
Do you do 100% whole bunch, or is it like a portion that you kind of do?
When we're pressing, it's always whole bunch. And that works really well because you've got the stalks and stuff in. The juice drains out very freely, because the trick with pressing grapes, you need to press them slowly and gently. Yeah. And, a lot of commercial wine operations, they would add enzyme at the press and extract the maximum amount of juice, trying to, from $1 trying to get the maximum amount of juice. We cut off much, much earlier and just look at the free run juice. The pressings can sometimes be put into a separate tank, and then we might consider reusing them, but mostly we're interested only in the free run juice because of the cleanness and the freshness.
That's delicious.
That's beautiful.
Have you had a variety before?
No. What is that kind of roundness, that kind of creaminess that kind of comes through?
Well, that's from the barrel.
Barrel.
Contact and barrel. Yeah. But I don't know where it sits. It's sort of something like a blend of Riesling and Chardonnay.
Yeah.
It's got a bit of both sort of things going on. It's a fabulous food wine, But Grunner Veltliner is to Austria what Riesling is to Germany. So 70% of the whites in Austria are Grunner Veltliner. It's a very interesting variety, and
beautiful.
It really suits our climate. We're looking for grapes that better suit our climate. That's been our research, trying to find varieties that really gel at this elevation with this sort of climate.
And it's not on your list here, so it's a special.
Oh no, it is. The tasting list is just what we have available in the most quantities.
Yes.
We move in and out of things, so we're currently sold out of Chardonnay and Pinot, but the new vintage will be available in about 6 or 8 weeks. So you just move with what you've got.
That's great. That's really nice.
We talk about good wines. Do you think you ever got close to perfection in terms of making like the perfect wine?
I don't think it exists, but it's certainly a goal.
Yeah.
We always aim for perfection every time, but it's an idea that may never be achieved. But I can show you something a bit later on. It's a Riesling we made in 2013. We found some clean skins in the cellar the other day, and we hadn't looked at it for ages. And we opened one, and it just blew me away. It was just 10 years of age, and it's just
Wow.
wonderful. But look, this is the Manseng. So we're making this slightly sweet. The reason is it's got a lot of acid. So if you made a dry wine with this, it'd almost curl your lips. You can drop acid out of wine with chemical treatments, cold stabilisation, things like that, but they strip flavour out of the wine. So here we just stop the ferment before it gets to dryness, and it's running at about 18 to 20 grams, which is actually quite high. But because the acidity is there, it tempers it. The sweetness tempers the acidity. The acidity tempers the sweetness, and that's the fun wine we were talking about earlier on with cheese or spicy food, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's also got texture. It's got interesting fruit flavours, a combination of sort of citrus and tropical characters. And as they age, that obvious sweetness disappears because the acid and the sugar actually intertwine and neutralise each other, and it just gives it a softness and a roundness, which is most enjoyable.
So you've got some aged Manseng as well, is it?
We've been making it since 2014, so
Yeah.
we've actually, we've learned a little bit along the way. Yeah.
Well, this is the first time I've ever tasted a Manseng, and I'm going to have more based on this experience. It is that sweetness, but the acidity kind of comes in right at the right time to balance it out. That's delicious.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
What type of grape variety do you think this is closest to then, the Manseng, if you're going to...
It's not.
You know?
It's not. It's a very old variety, so it grows in a region in France, southwest France, foothills of the Pyrenees, at a lower elevation than here. This is probably the coldest site that it grows anywhere, I think. But the reason we planted it is it actually has a loose bunch structure, open, like table grapes. You can just pull individual berries off, and it has a small berry with a thick skin, and it doesn't get botrytis. Whereas Riesling is a really tight-packed bunch. It's just like a tube, right? And it's very prone to botrytis. So in 2021, with the first year of the La Nina, our Riesling, before it was anywhere near ripe, got botrytis when we had rain. We left it to see what might come of it. Further rain rotted it on the vine. We didn't pick any Riesling. The 21 Manseng was possibly the best Manseng we'd made to date. So it got ripe, no botrytis, clean as a whistle. So it's a practical grape to grow. But it also, we can ripen it and we can make a very interesting wine with it. So that's what led me to look for other grape varieties that have looser bunch structures, like the Albino from Spain. And even the Grunner Veltliner, it's not as loose as those two, but it's not tight like a Riesling. So it has a better chance of surviving if there's unseasonal rain. In a dry climate, these aren't problems. The sun shines, you pick the grapes, no problem. But here, it's always a risk.
Great.
Yeah. And which of these, and maybe not any of these on the table in front of us, which is word of mouth's most popular wine that you find is being purchased?
Look, because we started out with the Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, we have a little bit of a reputation for that, but we've got a lot of new customers coming through every week, and the Manseng catches a lot of attention.
Yes,
it's quite often whenever most people tend to buy 2, 3, 4, 6, whatever. There's always a Manseng in there somewhere.
So Manseng's usually quite popular. Right now, your favourite is the Grunner
Veltliner.
Grunner.
I cannot pronounce it yet.
Veltliner. Grunner Veltliner. Grunner means green. Green Veltliner. Anything that's new is exciting.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited by this tasting, because a lot of these I haven't tried.
So what's next for word of mouth, though? Any other new projects you're looking to
get
into?
Just going to plant a little bit more of these varieties that we've trialled. We only put little plots in, and we're developing an extension of the vineyard. It's not a lot, probably another 15 rows or something like that. 5 rows of Gruner, 5 rows of Menthea, and then maybe 5 rows of the Albino, because we've got quite a bit of the Manseng, and that'll just mean that we have a little bit more to work with.
Right, that's awesome.
That's great.
Now, as I reflect on the wines, what I really love is like each one of them had their own personality.
Well, that's what you try to capture as a winemaker, and I think that's what Cool Climate really does well. It actually allows the varieties their optimum conditions to show their personality.
Okay. Pete, we're so grateful for your time and telling us your story and taking us through the wines. I think that's been a fantastic introduction to word of mouth and orange.
I think eye-opening as well for me in terms of these grape varietals.
Very excited to try
Yeah.
these different wines, and that's what's coming out. We'll let them wind up here. So, is there any last statements that you want to say?
And I think try word of mouth. I think for me it's surprised. You always see the big wineries, but also now trying these kind of small kind of boutique wineries and trying these wines that really have that kind of passion that kind of put into it, that really kind of, I guess, sing these kind of varietals. Really, I know, I feel I want to try more. Yeah.
We're happy, right?
Yeah,
We talk
I'm
about
happy.
smiling after you have
Yeah.
a taste of these wines, and these bring a smile to
Yeah.
a face. Pete, were there any last things that you'd want our listeners to know about your wines, word of mouth? Anything key that you'd like to point out?
Not really, but Orange is full of
Yeah.
a whole range of experiences, and it's at a really nice point in its maturity. I've been here for like 36 years, moved here from
Yeah.
Sydney, and the place has evolved, and it's become a solid destination for people from Sydney, Canberra, and also interstate travellers are hearing about us now. And the food part of things, the food festival
Yeah.
that happens in April, it's now into its 35th or 6th year. When I first came, there was only like 3 or 4 wineries. Now there's like 30 at Cellar doors. So
Yeah.
it's at a point of maturity where there's some wonderful experience with food and wine, but there's also lots of other things happening. We've got
Yes.
a beautiful lake, we've got a beautiful mountain,
Yes.
we've got a national park, we've got mountain biking, we've
Beautiful.
got all sorts of things. So
Lovely.
it's a great destination to visit, spend a few days, try a whole range of things, enjoy some good food
Awesome.
and wine and different experiences. Yeah.
And in word of mouth, it's not just wine; it's the experience, it's the food, it's the pottery, artwork that's going on. It's a great destination to visit here.
And of course, our dog Artemis.
And Artemis.
Now, we named our Cabernet after Artemis.
wow.
It's called the Big Hairy Mutt. But we also have another dog, Fluffy, we named our sparkling wine after.
Wow.
Who has a portrait on the back, a little portrait on the
wow.
front, and it's a real tongue-in-cheek Fluffy Bubbles.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
But it sells very well. Actually, that's another thing that we haven't talked about. But if Orange can hang its hat on anything, it could eventually be sparkling wine. I know Tasmania is
Yes.
getting a very solid reputation for sparkling wines. The conditions here are not dissimilar, if not quite similar to Tasmania, what they have in a southerly position we have
Yeah.
in terms of elevation. So our latest Fluffy, which is a Method Traditional,
Yeah.
vintage, 42 months on lees, it's Blanc de Blanc, it's 100% made in Orange. We made the base wine here, we did the tiraging, we did the disgorging,
Yeah.
and it's really clean, fresh, and
Wow.
it's a beautiful wine, and you'll see some very good sparkling wines. A lot of people are taking it very seriously now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I think we need more visits to Orange. And so that probably takes us to the end of this episode. At the wind up, definitely come to Orange, definitely come to Word of Mouth, delicious wines here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Pete, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. As we say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.